G'day there guys, it's your Aussie Hubby Markee, back at it again with another r/legal advice video. Now if you love me as much as I love you, then you know what to do. I want you to mosey on over to that old like button and tackle it like Crocodile Dundee. Maybe even chuck an Aussie flag down to the comments. Now with that said, I want you to sit back, relax, chuck a prawn on the barbie, and get ready for some bloody good legal advice with limited cliffhangers. Now, Fricked by Seller says, purchased a condo. Seller rented it to his nephew the day before contracts were signed. Now what? New York, Putnam County. Mostly what's in the title. Condo was vacant for roughly 60 days between closing and our attempt to move in. Upon getting there with our belongings, we discovered a new deadbolt on the door. The unit was vacant and had no deadbolt when we did our final walkthrough the day before closing. Tried knocking on the door. Got no answer. Reached out to the realtor, who contacted the seller's agent and asked to get in touch with his client to find out what the hell was going on. But at this point, we assumed squatters. About an hour later, a young man showed up and produced a 36-month lease which had been paid in advance. All $1 of it. He told us it's between us and his uncle, and headed over into the apartment. Our realtor is flabbergasted. He's encountered squatters and tenants who had to be evicted after refusing to leave at the end of the lease, but never anything like this. The police won't touch this either, which makes perfect sense given the context. Dude has a lease that predates our contract, albeit by 1 day, so as far as they're concerned, it is a civil matter. The condo association is incredibly hands-off about owners leasing their properties, which is part of why this place was appealing, as I plan to rent it out myself when we are ready to buy a house, so they want nothing to do with the situation. To me, it seems like the lease should be completely void, given that it was executed in ridiculously bad faith. But I am nowhere near a lawyer. To that end, the attorney who handled the transaction for us is out of town till next week. My understanding is that he's camping or hiking or hunting, or something along those lines, and is basically incommunicado for the time being, but I am waiting to hear back from his admin to get his details. He's a one-man firm, so there are no associates that can help me in the interim. I have no idea what to do here. Luckily, the truck we were using to move is owned by a friend's business, and they have graciously offered to let us store our belongings in it while we get this sorted. Unluckily, my wife and I turned in the keys to our old apartment this morning, and as such we have nowhere to go. I'd be willing to do a cash for keys thing to get this guy out of our apartment, but he won't speak to us. Beyond that, do I have grounds to evict him? If so, how do I recoup the expenses associated with this whole clusterfrick? Sue the seller? Does the tenant have any sort of liability here? If I do pull off a successful cash for keys arrangement, can I sue the seller for that as well? What about the friend who is letting us keep all the stuff in one of his trucks? Does he have any grounds to sue, or is the fact that he is voluntarily letting us use the truck take that out of the equation? Is there anything else that I am not thinking of? I am shaking with anger right now, so I apologize for this being a bit of a rambling novel, and thanks in advance for any advice you can offer. Edit, location is New York, specifically Putnam County. Now, it's clearly what's called a cloud on title. The warranty deed you signed at the closing says free of all encumbrances. A lease is clearly an encumbrance. Therefore, it is essentially a void transaction. I would contact the closing attorney immediately and tell him to cancel all the checks involved and hold all of the seller's money in escrow until you authorize its release or the nephew is out. Then contact an attorney. This is not something you'll be able to do on your own. This is basically fraud. Unfortunately, I believe that ship has sailed. We closed in early December, but I was at my old job in New York City, around 90 minutes south of here, till last week. The lease on my old place doesn't end till Friday, so I'd just been staying down there due to the faster commute. So yeah, I doubt there's anything in escrow. Either way, the attorney we used is on vacation, and my understanding is that it's a wilderness area, and he has no cell service. This is from my realtor, who knows the guy in passing. His admin is supposed to be giving me a call shortly to get the story, and hopefully let me know when I can expect to hear from him. And in regards to this basically being fraud, believe me, I am not even considering trying to handle this myself. This is nowhere near my field, and I am very much the type who prefers to let professionals handle the things for which they are professionals, which is probably due to my field. Anyway, do you have any advice on what type of attorney I'd need here? Real estate. Awesome. Hopefully the attorney who handled this transaction can represent us in the coming crapstorm as well. Thanks. I would get a second opinion, at least right now, while the old guy is MIA. I emailed another real estate attorney that my realtor suggested. Haven't heard back yet though. I am not going to go nuts on that front though, as I am hoping to stick with the guy I used for the closing. He and I clicked and he came across as the type who would be out for blood when he's not just handling a transaction. Your vacationing attorney might have partners that have access to his files. He also might have other staff that have a better chance of getting in touch with him. He's a one-man firm and the office is technically closed, but our realtor knows him personally and left a message with his admin, who I am now waiting to hear from. Final walkthrough the day before closing. I would assume that there is some language in the closing documents that the property must be vacant when the property is sold. So if that's the case, there should be two options. One, the lease was signed after closing when the property was legally yours, which means that this kid is just trespassing since the lease is signed by just some random dude who has no right to the property, the former owner. Dude has a lease that predates our contract, albeit by 1 day. Number 2, the lease was signed before closing, which would void the transaction. I'd guess the latter case, based on your description. In that case, you may be able to sue the seller for damages for acting in bad faith. The attorney, I'm sure, will give you a better idea. Unfortunately, I don't have access to the contract or any sort of closing documents right now, as it's boxed up in the truck. Actually, in the very back, behind all of the other crap with everything else from my desk. I'd assume that the sort of language about the property being vacant that you mentioned is included, but for now I cannot say for certain. And to the second point, the date on the lease is the day before our closing, so I am assuming that they signed it the same day as the walkthrough. If this is the case and the transaction is void, would my next step to be getting the eviction process started? Edit, thank you for the advice. I think that what the person you're replying to means is that your purchase of the property is void because it is based on the property being empty. Signing someone to a lease that is valid before closing should void your sale. You should be able to sue the previous owner, who is now likely the current owner, for acting in bad faith and for what money you have put into the transaction and whatever money you will have to spend to hold your belongings and yourself until this is all sorted. Out of curiosity, do you have any idea why the seller would lease the property for $1 for 36 months? I mean, I can kind of see if he took a big chunk of money for the lease while then also taking your money, but what is the end goal for him here? I don't know the details here, but my realtor said that the seller's agent intimidated that the apartment was being sold due to a not-so-amicable divorce or breakup or something along those lines. Frankly, I don't want to know the details. Whatever their drama is should not be my problem. Either way, I wouldn't be at all shocked if he was trying to pull one over his ex and my wife and I are just collateral damage. Yeah, I'm thinking that the condo has to be sold as joint property if they were both on the title, deed, mortgage, and he did this to try and void the sale and screw her over. Or she got the house in the divorce and the documentation was still being finalized to transfer everything solely into her name. Either way, an attorney would be able to sort it out if he was even legally able to lease the place to his nephew, which, if selling it was a condition of the separation, he probably wasn't. So it's possible that he will get double butt-fucked here if there is a court order saying that they had to sell the property to split the proceeds, or that he had to give up his claim on the house, since that's like some super obvious contempt. That would actually make a lot of sense, thanks. Whatever the motivation was, I am really hoping to see this guy get put in figurative thumbscrews when all is said and done. Alright, we've just read 9 minutes of comments, so I'm gonna just do all the updates that we have for this post now to round out the story. Update 4:45 PM. I just got a call from my attorney's admin. He's apparently close enough to civilization to have an internet connection in his cabin and should be checking in with her shortly, at which point she'll have him reach out to me. Apparently, he was a civil litigator before he retired to real estate law, and she thinks he'll welcome an excuse to step into his old shoes and tear these people apart. Needless to say, I am looking forward to hearing from him. Update 2, 5:25 PM. I just heard from both my realtor and my attorney. The evening seems to have found a way to get even more interesting, but the truck-owning friend is about 5 minutes out with my car. We're going to meet my realtor for dinner, my closing documents, and some badly needed drinks, said the guy who doesn't really drink. I'll update tomorrow morning, if not tonight, but till then, thank you for the advice and reassurance. Wish me luck. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the update. Purchased a condo, seller rented it to his nephew the day before the contracts were signed. Now what? I am going to make up some names for this time around, because referring to the people as the female seller or the tenant is cumbersome as hell. So after the mess on Wednesday, my dudes, I met my realtor for dinner and to grab my closing documents. The seller's agent actually wound up stopping by as well. He arranged this with my guy. He apologized profusely, told us he knows the family and he's confident we'll be able to get things sorted quickly. I didn't get my hopes up, but he picked up our tab and bought a round of drinks while he was there. So hey, when life gives you lemons, make a superhuman amount of whiskey, right? I don't think that's accurate, but it was my approach and I stand by it. Anyway, I wound up speaking with the seller, Anne, yesterday morning, and got the rundown on the situation. It turns out the unwelcome tenant, Bill, is actually her nephew, not her ex's, Charlie. She was absolutely livid with Bill, and promised me the apartment would be vacant ASAP, even if she had to physically drag him out of there and pay for movers to take all of his stuff. She also gave me assurances that she would cover whatever this ordeal has cost. From there, she said she was going to check in with her sister, Diane, who was dealing with Bill as we spoke, and get back to me as soon as she knows something. But again, promised that the absolute worst case scenario would be Bill starting to move out by early afternoon. Maybe half an hour later, she calls back and tells me that Diane had rented a truck and Bill was in the process of packing his stuff up. Turns out, Bill had recently experienced something pretty fudging awful, and as a result had sort of become preoccupied with seeking approval from adult males. Charlie was at the top of this list. Apparently, his midlife crisis consisted of buying a Harley and trying to carry himself like a cool. And Bill bought the act, hook, line, and sinker. And a lot of you guys assumed correctly. Bill cooked up the scheme to basically extort me for a cash for keys deal. From what I was told, Charlie figured a doctor from New York City would just pay out right away to be done with it. For what it's worth, I am not an MD, nor am I from New York City, but you do you, Chuck. Anyway, at this point, Anne threw me a curveball. She and Diane were both at peace with the fact that I was going to pursue this with the police, but asked if I could meet Bill so he could look me in the eye to apologize, because she wanted him to get an understanding of the fact that his actions hurt a real, live human being. So I agreed to it. I was hoping to see if I could get in to check the condition of the place anyway. So yesterday evening I went up to the apartment and met my tenant, as he was loading up the truck with his stuff. We wound up speaking for a while, and well, I'm going to disappoint some of you here. He seems like a genuinely good kid who got taken advantage of by a legitimate piece of garbage. There were a lot of tears and innumerable apologies, and I 100% believe that these were based on genuine remorse for what he did, not regret about actually getting caught. I'll just say it here because I don't think I was being as slick as I'd hoped in dancing around it anyway. But the kid recently lost his father, and I don't see any reason to screw up his life with a criminal record over a ridiculously, incredibly stupid mistake that he was to a great extent manipulated into making anyway. For whatever it's worth, if getting involved in a stupid scam like this was the worst thing that I did at 19, yeah, let's just say that I was remarkably stupid and reckless as a kid. I lucked out and never wound up getting caught in a situation that could have had significant legal consequences. But if I had, and I hadn't been given a second chance, I'd be living a very different life right now. As far as the money goes, Anne and I are going to figure out what's what, and I don't want to explain how because it involves details about her personal life. But the money will technically be coming out of Charlie's pocket anyway. She started hiring some movers to unload my truck, which is taking place as I type this. Bill left the apartment in a shockingly good condition, but I am basing that on what sort of damage 19-year-old me would have passively done to an apartment. So this may be a touch skewed. Either way, no damage has been done aside from some very minor cosmetic stuff. A couple of light scuffs from the moving furniture and things like that, all of which would be immaterial when I redo the apartment in anticipation of renting it out. So I am not going to concern myself with any of that stuff. And as far as Charlie goes, well, I mentioned in a few comments that my attorney, who is too majestically vicious for fake names, so he just becomes capital M, my capital A attorney, is a super intense old guy and later found out is a retired civil litigator who can't sit still long enough to actually retire. Yeah, he's out for fudging blood. Turns out Charlie does have himself some assets, and my attorney is pretty confident that they will become my assets soon enough. I had a brief chat with one of the officers who came by on Wednesday. He's a friend of Diane's apparently. This everyone knows everyone thing is still very foreign to me, and will be going by the station to issue a statement / file a report / whatever it is you do in this situation. Some of you expressed concerns that he may have fled the country, but the concept of Charlie leaving the country, let alone the United States, is very funny to Anne, Diane, and the officer friend of Diane. Seems like Charlie is just a dumb crap who thought that he could pull a fast one, and will be easy enough to find at one of the local watering holes when it's time for him to be picked up. I absolutely do not believe in throwing around assumptive diagnoses for fun, but I've made an exception in this case, and decided that Charlie has full-bore antisocial personality disorder because it makes me feel better about things for some reason. Anyway, I have been typing this piecemeal through the afternoon, which has essentially been a test for my wife's patience. I'm not dumb enough to incur the wrath of a tiny Puerto Rican woman who has spent the last couple of days stressed out of her mind. So, I'm going to call this a post. Thanks again for everyone on this sub for all the advice given and the sympathies expressed. I'm lucky as hell to have had this end the way it did. P.S. If a mod could let me know how to report someone's accounts that PM'd me to advertise their law firms, that would be wonderful. Pro tip to lawyers: advertising via Reddit PM does not inspire confidence in your legal acumen. Well, I hope you enjoyed that one, guys. That was a roundabout, lovely little story, and geez, he really got into it in this update, didn't he? God damn. Man was out for blood, but I'm glad that it worked itself out the way it did. There was so many more comments and replies by the original OP. I could have honestly stretched it to 15 minutes before I even did the updates, and it was all good content. So if you guys want me to do more comments, tell me down below. I kind of need you guys to back it up, whether you want me to do it or not. I like working off of your feedback. So yeah, tell me what you guys would like me to do. Anyway, on to the next stories, guys. Alright, I'm not gonna lie, this one doesn't have an ending, but I can understand why it doesn't have an ending. I want to know what you guys would do in this situation, because this is screwed up. I genuinely didn't think this was possible, and I want to know your guys' opinions on this whole thing. So this one's by Throwaway I'm So Scared. Conceived a child through IVF with my spouse. DNA tests show he is not a match to either of us. Cross-post to r/advice. This is in Ohio, USA. So, my spouse and I tried for 5 years to conceive a child. We were unsuccessful conceiving naturally. We were eventually successful on our third IVF attempt. He is 14 months old now. My biggest fear came true, that something went wrong. I don't know why I did it, but I performed a DNA paternity test on my baby. As it turns out, my baby is not a match to either of us. If I say something, I could lose my baby. After our last transfer, we should have had one embryo frozen still. So what happens to the embryo that was supposed to go in me? If my baby is not my baby, then we should have still 2 frozen embryos. But I am afraid of losing my little guy. I did have more than one test. 3 actually. Same results. What do I do? Edit, wording, edit 2. The first 2 DNA tests were performed by me. The third was performed by a doctor. Edit 3, my spouse knows. Now, if I say something I could lose my baby, I'm skeptical about this. You're the parents on the birth certificate. It would take extreme measures to remove this child from your responsibility. Yes, a DNA test starts that, but you're still dad legally. Weird question. Have you ever had test results, blood, etc. have to be redone / come back strange? Have you had a bone marrow transplant? It's rare, but it's possible that you have more than one DNA type. No, nothing like that. But for it to come back neg for us both? I saw a paternity and missed the birth. Apologies, a talk with your spouse and a consult with an attorney and a second opinion are probably in order. Absolutely speak with a lawyer regarding a negligence suit against the IVF clinic. There have been several high-profile cases of embryo implantation mix-up in Ohio. Also, I'm assuming you want to know what happened to your 2 embryos. Are they still at the clinic, or have they been mistakenly implanted into another unknowing couple? I know there is one left, as we are paying for storage. This is a dilemma. If my other embryo was implanted, and the resulted in a pregnancy, then I want custody of that baby. But that opens up a Pandora's box regarding my baby. I'd want them both, and I'm not afraid to admit that is selfish. But there is a chance that implant was not pregnancy, thus the IVF hospital owes me for that embryo. It's a mess. You do not know if there is one of your eggs left. You know that there is a egg left. If what's in your body was not your egg, you now have at least one missing. So we had 6 that originated from our retrieval. Try 1 did not survive the thaw, and we thawed another one and implanted. Resulted in a negative pregnancy test. 2 were implanted, resulted in a negative pregnancy test. 1 implanted, successfully got pregnant. Plus 1 left that we are paying for to remain frozen. So try 3, our embryo has to have gone somewhere. Was it implanted in someone else? Was it destroyed because the hospital didn't audit and realized they put someone else's in us? And realized so they took countermeasures? I don't know. No, that's what I'm saying. If they were negligent, it's possible that none of your eggs were implanted with yours. Think about it. If my embryo was implanted and resulted in a pregnancy, then I want custody of that baby. You may want to think that one over a bit more. Consider for a moment that you never took the paternity test, but the woman who had your child did. Suddenly, you get a knock on the door and find out not only were you implanted with the wrong embryo, but that she also wants to take your 14-month-old away and keep your biological child, leaving you with nothing. After years of trying, go through pregnancy and childbirth, a stranger comes along and says, "No, that's mine, gimme." So now you have a 14-month-old wondering why he's being taken away from his family and left with strangers who are telling him to call them mummy and daddy. This is all assuming that the other woman's child isn't older. It's a rock and a hard place. No one is denying that. But to quote Guardians of the Galaxy, he might have been your father, but he ain't your daddy. This is going to be less about what you want and more about what's best for the children caught in the middle. You need to speak to a lawyer who is familiar with custody situations like this one, but if there are laws in place in your state, that would require someone to carry your genetic child to term to return that child to you. Then I find it unlikely that you'll get it both ways. You don't want to get both to keep another couple's child, and take your child from a third couple. If the custody laws work in the way that it forces that theoretical couple who might have your child to give your child back to you, then those same laws would also force you to give your child back to their biological parents, assuming that they want the child. So find out what your legal obligations are, and then think very, very carefully about what you want to do, because it may not work out perfectly. Now that's a whole mess. I want you guys to tell me what you would do, because understandably they can't do an update to this one. It might just rat them out, and you don't want your child being taken off of you. So that's such a hard situation. It's probably one of the hardest ones I've seen in this. I didn't know it was possible to have an IVF go so wrong. That's disgusting negligence. Anyway guys, on to our next story. In Massachusetts, I think it is? Yeah, Massachusetts. I'm a 16-year-old whose house was broken into when I was home alone by 4 people. Pistol whipped, beat, and robbed. My parents do not want me to testify and help police. I do, so this doesn't happen to anyone else. May I talk to police and testify without their permission? So this happened around 2 weeks ago, and it seems like without me as a witness and other details I have yet to tell them, the police are dropping the case. Well, you see, the short answer is yes, you may. The long answer is, well, long. Your parents have no legal avenue to prevent you from speaking to the police, nor to prevent you from giving testimony in court. However, they can punish you within the limits of parental authority. Groundings, yes, beatings, no. For going against their wishes. However, on top of that, things like witness intimidation are against the law, regardless of who does them. And the police are unlikely to look kindly on parents punishing material witnesses who happen to be minors. If you choose to go ahead with this, speak to your police department's victims advocate departments or to Child Protective Services about your parents' wishes that you not cooperate with the police. And be frank, don't call me Shirley, with the officer interviewing you about what your parents have asked of you. If you're unduly punished, which includes things like being kicked out of your home, speak to the police again. I appreciate this reply a lot. It has a lot of great information. Please request a court-appointed advocate. You need someone speaking on your behalf that holds your best interests. I'm sorry this happened to you. Contrary to TV and movies, very rarely do defendants retaliate whatsoever. Once they are identified as defendants, certain protections attach to you. If they mess with you, all you have to do is notify the detectives and the prosecutor, and additional charges will attach to them. Additionally, their bonds will be revoked and they won't be free until their trial, which can be a long time. I'm not saying there is no risk. People who did what they did are not the smartest, and they aren't as scared off by most people. Tough choice. Good luck. Why do your parents not want you to testify? Pretty much what my previous commenters said. They know where I live, and we know they own guns. That's true no matter what though. If you don't speak up, then they know they can get away with it again. I hope this isn't too off topic. Most of the reason people get away with this stuff is because people won't cooperate with the police. I admire your stones, and you should testify if you're up to it. Chances are you won't have to. You'll get deposed, they'll plead guilty, and then nothing will happen. Your testimony and sworn statement is a threat to get them to plead guilty to a lesser sentence. Happens all the time, I believe well over 80%. I just want to point out, as a parent myself, they are most likely worried about your long-term safety. I know it doesn't seem prudent to you, but since it could happen to someone else, but other people aren't their primary concern. Also being 16, you don't have much life experience as them. I know it hurts to hear as a young person, but it is true. I'm not exactly sure what the motives are, but this sounds like a specific and targeted attack. My only advice is that you at least consider their judgment. Even if you go against their wishes, try and sympathize with their thinking. It will be easier for you to go against them if they understand you are being sympathetic to their cause. However, you still chose to stand by your own moral compass. I hope this advice isn't too irrelevant for this sub, but if it is, I suppose it'll be removed. I know it's not legal advice, but I'm just trying to help a young person like yourself understand how us older people think. I hope I don't come off as patronizing because I was quite anti-authority when I was a young lad myself. And now here's the update to this one. Hey, so I'm back with an update, given I literally just got a call from the outstanding detective who was working on my case. Before I go into that, I just want to clarify a few things from my last post. 1. My parents are amazing people, and I truly believe they have the best interests at heart. I want to testify because it could help other people in the future where my parents don't want me to, because my safety is their biggest and only concern, which is admirable in its own right. 2. Although I couldn't give the best, most accurate description of the people, it seemed like one of them was much older than the rest. He was one of the two with guns, and was the one who hit me mainly. I would say he was around 30 to 40, whereas the rest seemed to be high school aged, with one kid seeming younger than me, even though he had a plethora of face tattoos. So I really only want the leader to go away, I guess, because I couldn't even see the other kids hurting anyone on their own. Okay, so for the update, which is like really good. My neighbor has a security cameras, which captured, although not in great quality, pictures of these men's faces along with their license plate. So talking to the detective, it seems like I'll only need to give a deposition and they will still probably be able to prosecute. I'm not entirely sure the specifics of that, but I know it means I won't need to publicly testify, which makes me and my parents happy. Like, really happy. I just wanted to say thanks everyone who offered advice and the people who DM'd me with their best wishes. It actually does mean a lot, so thank you guys. And I'm glad this one has a good ending, you know? I don't think they can go into more specifics for this one, but, you know, I think we can draw from this that the child is safe and that everyone, you know, came together in the end, and we're happy here. Alright, and that's where I'm going to leave this one today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Tell me what you thought about these longer stories. I know you've been a bit mad about no conclusions, yada yada yada. I'm sorry. Anyway guys, I'm going to try a whole bunch of different subs after this one. There's like quite a few new ones that I just found browsing Reddit, so tell me what you think of some new topics that I'm going to try covering. I know you guys love legal advice. There's too many stories to cover, so I'm just going to keep this one going for as long as possible because, hey, you guys love hearing it and I love reading it out. I'm glad that I can live my dream of actually using my voice to, you know, be successful in some regard with it, and I'm really happy to keep making this content. So tell me what you guys are up to today. How is quarantine treating you? And as always, guys, this has been Markee. I hope you have a good day, night, sleep, evening, whatever you've been up to. It gets dark really late in Ireland, I'm not used to it. But yeah, I hope you have a good one, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.